The early morning fog clung to the SEAL training grounds like a stubborn veil, muffling the sound of footsteps and distant shouting. Jenna Morales stepped off the transport bus, hood pulled low over her head, as if shielding herself from the curious eyes that immediately fell upon her. The base was alive with the disciplined chaos of trainees in formation, shouting drills and instructors barking commands. The air carried the sharp tang of salt from the nearby bay and the iron scent of sweat from hours of morning exercises. It was a place built to challenge the mind, body, and spirit, qualities Jenna knew all too well. She adjusted the strap of her duffel bag, her eyes scanning the rows of barracks and obstacle courses. Everything about the place screamed discipline and endurance, but also judgment. She had heard the whispers before even arriving, rumors of newcomers, of people who didn't belong. And yet she felt calm, confident. There was a purpose behind every step she took, a reason why she had been here, even if no one yet knew it. As she walked across the gravel courtyard, the tattoo peeking subtly from under her sleeve drew attention, though she kept it mostly hidden. It was intricate, winding across her forearm in patterns that seemed almost alive. To the untrained eye, it was just ink. To those who knew its meaning, it was a declaration of experience, sacrifice, and survival, secrets she wasn't ready to share. The whispers started almost immediately. A group of trainees lounging by the obstacle course glanced at her, smirking, their laughter quiet but sharp. "Look at that," one muttered, elbowing his companion. "New girl thinks she can survive here with that tattoo. She's going to break on the first rope climb." Jenna ignored them. She had faced worse. The laughter bounced off her like water sliding from rock. Every comment, every glance only strengthened her resolve. She had been underestimated many times before, and every time she had proven that appearances were deceiving. Commander Cross stood a short distance away, observing the new arrivals with a meticulous gaze. He had been at the base for over a decade, overseeing some of the most grueling training programs for the SEALs, and he thought he had seen everything. And yet, something about this young woman made him pause. Perhaps it was the way she moved with quiet authority, her back straight despite the weight of her bag, or the calm in her eyes as she scanned the grounds. There was a subtle strength in her posture, a confidence that wasn't flashy but undeniable. He frowned slightly, unconsciously noting the hint of ink beneath her sleeve. As Jenna continued toward the registration office, she passed the rows of trainees running drills, their bodies slick with sweat and determination. She watched them for a moment, seeing their predictable patterns, the tension in their shoulders, the pride that masked their fear of failure. She remembered herself at their stage, feeling both excitement and dread, knowing that the coming weeks would push her to limits she hadn't yet imagined. But she was ready. She always was. Inside the registration office, the atmosphere was no less intense. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and worn gear. Officers moved quickly, checking paperwork, issuing uniforms, and barking instructions at the new arrivals. Jenna stepped up to the counter, keeping her hood low, revealing just enough of her face to meet the sharp eyes of the officer behind it. "Name?" the man asked, scanning her documents without looking up. "Jenna Morales," she replied, her voice steady. It was calm, controlled, the tone of someone who had been trained to answer questions without giving away unnecessary information. The officer's eyes flicked up at her briefly. He didn't smile, didn't react. Most people expected nerves, hesitation, maybe even a hint of fear, but there was none of that here. He glanced down at her paperwork, nodded curtly, and handed her a folder. "Follow the instructions. You'll be assigned to your training group soon." Jenna took the folder, keeping her movements deliberate, measured. Every action, every expression was calculated. She was used to being scrutinized, used to standing in environments where one mistake could define a reputation. Here, she would not allow anyone to misjudge her, not today, not ever. As she turned to leave, she caught sight of the training fields outside the window. The sun had just begun to pierce the fog, casting long shadows across the gravel and mud. She could see groups of trainees pushing through obstacle courses, carrying heavy loads, running in formation, falling, getting up again. It was a brutal, relentless dance of endurance, and it thrilled her. This was where she belonged. Outside again, Jenna adjusted her hood over her head, concealing the tattoo fully now. She walked across the courtyard, ignoring the pointed stares and whispered commentary. She felt the weight of their judgment like a cloak, but she wore it lightly. Let them laugh, let them speculate. Soon, she would reveal more than just a tattoo. She would reveal skill, precision, and experience that few could match. Commander Cross continued to watch from a distance. There was a tension in his chest he couldn't quite explain. He had seen elite trainees before, yes, but this one was different. The air around her seemed to carry a quiet authority, a subtle energy that drew attention without effort. He didn't yet know the significance of the ink on her arm, but he would. Soon, he would see the truth behind the hood. The day progressed with the usual flurry of introductions, orientation drills, and initial assessments. Trainees ran, lifted, carried, and measured themselves against the harsh standards of the SEAL program. Jenna followed instructions precisely, her every movement observed by instructors and peers alike. She did not speak unless required, did not seek approval, did not try to impress. Her reputation would not be built on words but on action. As the sun climbed higher, she paused at the edge of the obstacle course for a moment, adjusting her gloves. She looked at the series of walls, ropes, and mud pits stretching before her. Every trainee approaching it carried a mix of dread and determination, but Jenna's eyes were calm, assessing each challenge as though reading a familiar map. This was no intimidation. This was an opportunity, a proving ground. By the end of the morning, the new trainees gathered in formation, sweaty, exhausted, but full of anticipation for what the next weeks would bring. Jenna stood silently, hood still drawn, her tattoo hidden, the other trainees casting occasional glances filled with curiosity and disbelief. They laughed quietly at first, underestimating her abilities. But the seeds of doubt had already begun to take root in their minds. Something about her was not ordinary, and soon, everyone, including Commander Cross, would learn just how extraordinary she truly was. The first few days of SEAL training were a grueling baptism by fire. Sweat-soaked uniforms, voices cracked from shouting, and muscles ached in ways most civilians could never imagine. Jenna Morales moved through it all with quiet precision, her every action measured, almost unnervingly calm. She climbed walls, swung across ropes, and carried heavy loads without a single falter. And yet, despite her skill, the other trainees couldn't resist mocking her tattoo, whispering and snickering when they thought she wasn't looking. "Look at that," muttered one trainee, his voice dripping with sarcasm as he elbowed a companion. "She probably thinks it's a magic tattoo. Maybe it makes her super strong or something." "Yeah, maybe it talks to her too," another replied, smirking. The laughter rolled across the training yard like waves, irritating to some, amusing to others. Jenna ignored them, moving with a calm focus that only seemed to fuel their mockery. She didn't argue, didn't make excuses. She let them underestimate her. In her experience, people who judged quickly rarely saw the full picture. Commander Cross, standing on the sidelines, observed everything with the meticulous scrutiny that had earned him respect among SEAL veterans. He noticed the subtle shift in the group's energy when Jenna executed each exercise flawlessly. The mockery faded incrementally each time she landed perfectly from a rope swing or scaled a wall faster than most male trainees could manage. Still, a few stubborn voices persisted, fueled by ego and habit. Cross frowned, intrigued by the dynamics. She had skill, but there was more to her, something he couldn't yet name. During lunch, Jenna sat alone at the far edge of the mess hall, quietly unpacking her meal. The other trainees lounged in clusters, laughing and sharing stories of past missions, real or imagined, trying to impress one another. Every so often, someone would glance at her tattoo, smirk, and whisper again. "She's hiding something," one said under his breath, though it sounded more like an accusation than a curiosity. "She probably can't keep up. Watch, she'll fall apart when the instructors really push us," replied another. Jenna sipped water calmly, her eyes scanning the room. She had learned early on that people loved to assume, and assumptions were almost always wrong. She had spent years surviving in environments far more hostile than this training ground. Their laughter, their whispers meant nothing. And yet there was a small thrill in knowing that one day she would reveal the truth, and it would leave them speechless. By the afternoon, the trainees were back in formation, facing their first real endurance test, a grueling obstacle course that demanded strength, speed, and coordination. Sweat dripped from foreheads, mud clung to uniforms, and instructors barked commands with unrelenting intensity. Jenna stepped forward, hood still drawn to conceal her tattoo, and surveyed the course. The first obstacle, a towering wall, required careful calculation and timing. Jenna sprinted forward, hands gripping the rough wood, legs propelling her upward with smooth efficiency. She scaled the wall in a motion so fluid that some trainees froze for a moment, staring. A few muttered under their breath, "No way," as she landed gracefully on the other side. The whispers of mockery began to falter. Next came the rope swing over the mud pit, a challenge that had humbled many trainees in the past. Jenna approached it with calm determination, swinging across effortlessly, her body controlled, precise, and almost serene in its motion. Gasps echoed as some trainees struggled behind her. Even the instructors exchanged brief glances of approval, nodding her uncanny control. During the remaining exercises, weighted carries, timed sprints, and climbing structures, Jenna performed flawlessly. Every move was deliberate, every strategy effective. The mockery of her tattoo had quieted, replaced with tentative curiosity and disbelief. Even the most arrogant trainees began to wonder if they had misjudged her entirely. Commander Cross observed from a shaded vantage point, arms crossed. He noted her flawless execution, the calm authority in her movements, and the subtle confidence that she exuded without words. Something about her reminded him of operatives he had encountered years ago in covert missions, exceptionally skilled but unassuming. He felt an uneasy respect grow, coupled with a sense of apprehension. Her tattoo, now barely visible under her sleeve, hinted at a past he could not yet fully grasp. As the day drew to a close, the trainees gathered for debriefing. Some were bruised and battered, others exhausted to the point of collapse. Jenna stood quietly at the back, observing, listening. She answered questions succinctly, never boasting. The other trainees, still nursing their bruised egos, shot her occasional glances. They saw her talent, yet their pride prevented them from admitting it. "Not bad," one finally muttered, grudging respect creeping into his tone. "For a girl." Jenna's lips curved into the smallest of smiles, almost imperceptible. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Action, not words, had always been her way of proving herself. Cross, meanwhile, made a mental note to review her file more closely. Something about her experience, her precision, and the mysterious tattoo suggested a history far beyond a standard trainee. The insignia was familiar to him, though he couldn't immediately place it. Whoever she had been, and still was, carried a skill set that could prove invaluable if she chose to reveal it. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jenna walked alone to the barracks. The ground was soft with mud from the day's training, and the distant sounds of other trainees, groans and laughter echoed through the base. She paused for a moment, adjusting her hood, making sure the tattoo remained hidden. It was a symbol of her past, her experience, and her secrets, one that few could understand and fewer still could appreciate. She sat on the edge of her bunk, quietly tending to minor scrapes and bruises with practiced care. Her mind replayed the day's events, noting who had underestimated her, who had watched closely, and who might recognize the significance of the tattoo if given the chance. She felt a thrill, a quiet satisfaction in the knowledge that she had survived the first real day unscathed, not just physically, but socially. Tomorrow would bring more challenges. Longer runs, heavier carries, more obstacles, and more judgmental eyes. But Jenna was ready. She had been underestimated before, and every time she had used it as fuel. The laughter, the whispers, and the doubts of others were nothing more than noise. Soon, their perception would change, and when it did, it would leave an impression they would never forget. As lights went out and the barracks fell silent, Jenna lay awake for a while longer, thinking of what the coming weeks would hold. Her tattoo, hidden beneath the fabric of her uniform, pulsed with unspoken stories and silent warnings. One day she would reveal it, and when she did, Commander Cross, the very man who now scrutinized her every movement, would freeze in recognition. But for now she slept lightly, muscles sore but mind alert. This was just the beginning. The morning air was crisp and biting as the trainees gathered for the next grueling exercise. The sun had barely pierced the horizon, casting long, thin shadows over the gravel and mud-streaked grounds. Jenna Morales stood quietly at the edge of the formation, hood drawn low over her head, hiding the intricate tattoo on her forearm. Her breathing was steady, controlled, a rhythm honed over years of preparation. Around her, the other trainees flexed, shifted nervously, and exchanged half-whispered bets on who would falter first. She didn't engage, didn't smile, didn't react. She simply waited. The first challenge of the day was a simulated urban combat exercise. Trainees were tasked with navigating a mock village, clearing rooms, identifying targets, and coordinating as a team. It was a test of stamina, tactical thinking, and instinct, all of which Jenna had mastered long before setting foot on this base. The other trainees, still carrying yesterday's whispers and doubts, watched her with skeptical eyes. They expected hesitation, failure, or at least a moment of weakness. Jenna approached the first building. The instructors barked orders, signaling for teams to breach the structure. Most of the trainees hesitated at the threshold, eyes wide, unsure how to proceed. Jenna stepped forward confidently. Every movement was deliberate, almost graceful but underlaid with lethal precision. She signaled to the others, not with words but gestures honed from silent communication, and they instinctively followed. It was as though she moved with the authority of someone who had led countless missions under far deadlier circumstances than a training simulation. Inside the building, chaos erupted. Smoke grenades hissed, alarms blared, and the simulated enemy fired blanks from concealed positions. Some trainees froze, unsure where to move, stumbling over debris. Jenna, however, advanced calmly, scanning corners, signaling teammates, and neutralizing threats with uncanny timing. One trainee fell behind, tripping over a fallen beam. Jenna extended a hand, steadying him without breaking stride, and continued forward. The others began to notice, whispering under their breath, "How is she doing this?" Outside, Commander Cross observed with growing unease. He had seen top trainees excel, but none moved with this combination of precision, calm, and authority. Something about her reminded him of operatives he had deployed with years ago, those rare individuals who could turn chaos into order almost instinctively. And then he noticed the faint edge of her tattoo beneath her sleeve. The symbol was familiar, too familiar. He froze for a fraction of a second, his mind racing to place it. There was no official record of its significance, and yet he recognized it from intelligence briefings and covert mission reports. This was no ordinary trainee. Jenna's team navigated the building flawlessly, completing the exercise in record time. The instructors murmured among themselves, impressed by her leadership without vocal domination. She didn't demand attention, she earned it through action. The other trainees stared, jaws slightly slack, as the girl they had mocked seemed to orchestrate the entire mission single-handedly. Back outside, Jenna pulled her team to a secondary objective, a simulated hostage extraction. She moved quickly, issuing precise signals, guiding them with authority that brooked no argument. One trainee, emboldened by her calm demeanor, attempted to speak over her, questioning a maneuver. She turned, meeting his gaze with quiet intensity, and simply gestured, "Follow my lead." The young man fell silent, compelled not by fear but by an unspoken recognition of competence. As the exercise concluded, Jenna's team had not only succeeded, they had excelled. No mistakes, no hesitation, no wasted motion. The other trainees looked on, stunned. Some muttered excuses about luck, others tried to downplay her success, but Cross saw the truth. Her performance had the unmistakable signature of someone who had survived real-life missions where mistakes meant death. This wasn't luck or training. This was experience, discipline, and skill beyond measure. During debriefing, the instructors praised Jenna for her leadership and precision. Exceptional execution, one said. Smooth coordination, minimal errors, outstanding situational awareness. Jenna nodded quietly, neither elated nor dismissive. She didn't need their praise. She had expected nothing less from herself. Yet she could feel the shift in energy among the trainees. The laughter about her tattoo, the whispered jokes, those had vanished, replaced by hushed curiosity and tentative respect. Cross approached her after the session, his expression unreadable but his eyes sharp. "Jenna," he said, his voice calm, measured, "where did you learn to move like that?" She met his gaze, lips curving faintly. "Experience," she said, as if the single word explained everything. But Cross knew it didn't. That word carried weight he hadn't encountered in years. Her performance had proven one undeniable fact. She was more than a trainee. She was someone with a history he had only glimpsed in intelligence reports and briefings on covert operations. The other trainees, meanwhile, began murmuring among themselves. They tried to rationalize what they had witnessed. "She must train somewhere else, like a private military company or something," one whispered. Another added, "Maybe she's a former officer or something. I've never seen anyone move like that." The words were tinged with awe, but also lingering disbelief. Jenna, aware of the conversations but unconcerned, moved to her bunk, removing her gloves and wiping sweat from her brow. The tattoo remained hidden beneath her uniform, a silent symbol of experience and survival. Only she knew its true significance, the mission she had completed, the danger she had faced, and the people she had led in life-or-death situations. For now, it remained a secret. Soon, though, the truth would come to light in a way that would leave everyone, including Cross, frozen in recognition. That night, as Jenna lay in the barracks, muscles aching but mind sharp, she reflected on the day's events. She had anticipated mockery, skepticism, and doubt, and she had met each with calm precision. Every whispered insult, every glance of disbelief had fueled her resolve. The tattoo, a mark of her past, was still hidden, waiting for the right moment to reveal its significance. When that day came, there would be no doubt. She would be recognized not for appearance, but for mastery, for experience, for the truth written on her skin. Outside, the other trainees struggled through basic conditioning drills, their confidence shaken, though few admitted it aloud. The girl they had mocked, the one with the hidden tattoo, had changed their perception in a single day. Cross, meanwhile, scribbled notes in his journal, a habit he had maintained for years. His instincts told him that Jenna Morales was not just exceptional. She was a rare operative capable of feats most would deem impossible. The question now was not whether she belonged here, but how far her skills could take the unit when fully revealed. And somewhere in the darkness, Jenna smiled faintly beneath her hood. The first shock had been delivered. The whispers had begun to quiet. The mocking had started to turn into curiosity. And the true test of skill, perception, and secrecy was only just beginning. The evening settled over the SEAL training base, painting the sky with streaks of deep orange and violet. The rigorous exercises of the day left every trainee exhausted, muscles sore, and spirits tested. Yet Jenna Morales moved with a calm composure, her gait steady as she returned to her barracks. Sweat clung to her skin, dirt smeared her uniform, but she carried herself like someone who had already conquered worse challenges than any training course could offer. Her tattoo remained hidden beneath her sleeve, the symbol of a past no one on the base could yet comprehend. Commander Cross paced the observation deck overlooking the training grounds. The events of the day replayed in his mind like fragments of a puzzle he couldn't yet solve. Jenna's performance had been flawless, precise, calculated, and almost instinctual. But it wasn't just her skill that unsettled him. It was the aura of control she exuded, the way others unconsciously followed her lead even when her commands were nonverbal. Cross had spent years evaluating elite operatives, but Jenna presented a rare enigma. He felt a mixture of admiration and unease. By the time the last of the trainees had returned to the barracks, Cross made his decision. He needed answers, though he suspected Jenna would not give them freely. He approached her quietly, waiting until the other trainees had scattered to their rooms. His voice was calm but firm. "Jenna," he said, stepping into the dimly lit common area, "mind if I ask you a few questions?" Jenna looked up from her small area on the bunk, her eyes meeting his with an unwavering gaze. She was tired, yes, but not defeated, not even close. "Depends," she replied softly, her voice steady and measured. "Are the questions worth answering?" Cross studied her, nodding, the faint smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. There was confidence there, yes, but also a quiet challenge. "You don't have to give details," he said carefully. "I just need to know, where did you learn to move like that today? That precision, that timing, it's beyond what most of our trainees achieve in years." Jenna tilted her head slightly, considering him. "Experience," she said simply, the single word carrying weight, enough to hint at a past filled with discipline, danger, and responsibility. Cross felt a shiver run down his spine. That word was never used lightly, never without a history to back it. He nodded slowly, acknowledging her evasiveness. "I see," he said, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. "Experience can mean many things, but there's more to it, isn't there?" His eyes flicked to her sleeve, to the subtle curve of the tattoo he had glimpsed during training. A symbol that he recognized, though he couldn't immediately place its meaning. It belonged to a program, a series of missions classified beyond most SEAL knowledge. If she had been part of that, she wasn't just exceptional. She was dangerous in the sense of unmatched capability. Jenna's lips curved faintly. "Some things are better left in the past," she said. Her tone was calm, almost dismissive, yet it carried the weight of authority. Cross could sense that she had survived situations he could only imagine, and that the tattoo beneath her sleeve was a mark of those experiences. But he also sensed she was watching him, gauging his reaction as carefully as he was analyzing her movements. "Better left in the past?" he asked, tilting his head, intrigued. "Or hidden until the right time?" She gave no answer, only a quiet nod. That single gesture spoke volumes. She wasn't ready to reveal everything, not yet, but she had no doubt that when the time came, everyone would understand. Cross could feel the tension rising within him. He had dealt with skilled operatives before, but few could carry both skill and mystery in equal measure. Jenna Morales was one of them. Meanwhile, other trainees continued their evening routines, unaware of the conversation happening in the shadows. They still whispered about her tattoo, though their tone had shifted from mockery to curiosity. "Do you think she's hiding some military background?" one asked another. "She moves like she's been in combat before," replied the other, eyes wide with disbelief. The seed of doubt was growing among them. The laughter of yesterday had begun to fade into uncertain awe. Jenna, however, was unaffected. She unpacked her gear with deliberate care, every movement efficient and controlled. She reflected on the day's exercises, analyzing mistakes others had made and noting their patterns. Her mind worked even when her body ached, a trait honed over years of missions where attention to detail had meant the difference between life and death. The tattoo under her sleeve was a reminder of those experiences, a silent testimony of survival and resilience. Cross remained on the observation deck a while longer, packing, reviewing his notes, and replaying her actions in his mind. The familiar curve of the tattoo haunted his thoughts. It was a symbol tied to missions few had survived or even known existed. Her performance had confirmed something he had only begun to suspect. She had experience in operations so elite and clandestine that most of the SEAL community wouldn't believe them if told. That night, Cross considered approaching her again, pushing for more information. But instinct told him to wait. Jenna Morales was calculating. She revealed things on her own terms. Pressing her now would yield nothing but caution, and he sensed that part of her power lay in the controlled mystery she maintained. The right moment would come. When it did, the full weight of her capabilities and the meaning of her tattoo would hit like a hammer. Meanwhile, Jenna settled into her bunk, rolling her shoulders and stretching tight muscles. She had survived the first week unscathed. not just physically but socially. The mockery of her tattoo was fading, replaced by curiosity and unspoken respect. She allowed herself a small, private smile. The puzzle pieces were falling into place. Trainees were beginning to see glimpses of her skill. The instructors were noticing, and even Cross was clearly unsettled by the quiet authority she wielded without effort. She thought about tomorrow's exercises, already anticipating the challenges. More complex maneuvers, more coordination, more testing of endurance and strategy. Each day was a chance to demonstrate her abilities subtly, to let actions speak louder than words. She didn't need to reveal her past yet, not fully. The tattoo could remain hidden a little longer, its significance a quiet secret waiting to be understood. By the time the lights in the barracks dimmed, Jenna was already mentally reviewing the exercises for the next day. The other trainees were asleep, unaware of the storm of skill and experience quietly reshaping the perception of the base. Cross, from his observation post, was deep in thought, piecing together what little he knew and bracing for what he suspected would be revealed soon. Jenna's hood remained low, the tattoo hidden from view, yet it pulsed in her mind as a reminder of the identity she carried, the missions she had survived, and the authority she could command without uttering a single word. She had already begun to change the narrative of the training grounds, shifting mockery into cautious admiration, uncertainty into suspense, and doubt into recognition of her hidden power. When the morning came, it would bring new challenges, new trials, and the next opportunity to demonstrate why Jenna Morales was not merely a trainee, but a force to be reckoned with. And somewhere, deep within Cross, a sense of anticipation grew. He didn't yet know how, but he was certain that the day the hood came off and the tattoo was revealed would change everything. Until then, all he could do was watch, wait, and try to piece together the extraordinary truth of the young woman whose calm authority had begun to unsettle even him. The morning sun spilled over the SEAL training grounds, casting a golden haze across the obstacle courses and barracks. Today was different. A tactical exercise had been scheduled, one that would test coordination, strategy, and individual skill in ways far more complex than the previous drills. The trainees lined up, tense and jittery, muscles aching from days of relentless training. Among them stood Jenna Morales, hood still drawn, her expression calm, almost serene, as if she already knew the outcome of what was about to unfold. Whispers ran through the crowd. "Do you think she can really handle this one?" one trainee muttered to another. "She's good, sure, but this is harder than anything we've done." They still remembered her flawless performance in previous exercises, yet their pride and skepticism clung stubbornly. No one dared approach her directly, they simply watched, a mix of curiosity and uncertainty in their eyes. Commander Cross observed from the sidelines, notebook in hand, heart pounding with anticipation. He had pieced together fragments of her past from her behavior, her skill, and the faint glimpse of ink he had seen earlier, but he still had no complete understanding. Today, he knew, would be the day that the truth, at least part of it, would be revealed. The air was electric with tension, a quiet hum that seemed to reverberate through every muscle and bone of the assembled trainees. The exercise began with a simulated urban combat scenario. Teams were tasked with navigating a series of interconnected buildings, clearing rooms, neutralizing simulated hostiles, and extracting high-value targets without mistakes. Most trainees hesitated at the threshold, mentally calculating risk and timing. Jenna, however, stepped forward with deliberate confidence, signaling to her team with subtle gestures honed through experience. Her movements were smooth, calculated, commanding attention without words. As they reached the first building, instructors watched closely, nodding her calm authority. She was guiding her team, positioning them, signaling silently, anticipating challenges before they arose. A simulated blast went off in one corner, sending smoke curling into the room. Trainees flinched, but Jenna's team moved seamlessly, following her lead. It was then, during a pause in the exercise, that she pulled back her hood. Time seemed to slow. The tattoo on her forearm, now fully visible, was breathtaking in its detail and significance. Intricate lines formed a symbol, unmistakable to those who knew its meaning, a mark of an elite, classified SEAL unit, one that operated in missions so covert and dangerous that only a handful of individuals had ever seen it firsthand. Commander Cross froze. Recognition hit him like a hammer. He had seen that insignia in classified intelligence briefings years ago, thought to be retired, almost mythical in its level of secrecy. His breath caught, a momentary pause betraying the shock he usually masked with iron discipline. The woman before him was not just an exceptional trainee, she was a survivor of missions most would never hear of, let alone endure. The other trainees stared, jaws slack, eyes wide with disbelief. The laughter of previous days, the whispered mockery, evaporated in an instant. Some whispered to one another, scarcely daring to speak her name. Is that real?" one asked, voice trembling with awe. Another added, she's been through actual ops." Their minds struggled to reconcile the girl they had mocked with the symbol of lethal skill displayed on her skin. Jenna's gaze swept the group, calm, confident, unflinching. She did not speak immediately. She didn't need to. The tattoo spoke volumes. It was not just ink. It was a history of survival, of courage, of missions carried out in shadows that most would never even imagine. Each line was a story, each curve a testament to the endurance and capability required to operate in environments where one mistake meant death. Finally, Commander Cross approached, voice low but steady. "Jenna, that symbol, I recognize it." His eyes narrowed, searching her expression for any hint of deception. "Where did you get this?" She smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly, and said, "It's a part of my past, a past that prepared me for this moment." Her tone was calm, measured, but it carried the weight of truth and authority. Cross's mind raced. Every move she had made during training, every subtle command, every calculated action, it all made sense now. The skill, the precision, the ability to command respect without speaking a word, it had all been real, and it had all been honed long before she arrived at the base. The trainees, still processing, began to adjust their stance toward her. No longer was she a mockable newcomer, she was a force. Quiet, lethal, experienced beyond belief. Some bowed their heads slightly in respect, others whispered apologies under their breath. Jenna, however, remained unaffected. She had not arrived to earn their approval, she had arrived to prove her capability, and she had done so decisively. Cross, regaining composure, allowed himself a rare, approving nod. He had trained hundreds of men and women, overseen countless missions, yet few had unsettled him in the way Jenna Morales now did. She was not just competent, she was extraordinary, a living reminder of the elite capabilities that existed at the very edge of SEAL operations. Her tattoo, once a source of whispered mockery, had become a symbol of authority and undeniable skill. The exercise continued, but the atmosphere had shifted entirely. Trainees followed her lead, listening intently to her subtle gestures, her calm signals. Mistakes were minimized, movements synchronized, and the mission was executed with a fluidity that bordered on perfection. Where once there had been doubt, there was now respect. Where once there had been laughter, there was awe. By the time the exercise concluded, instructors and trainees alike were left in quiet admiration. Jenna's tattoo had been revealed, but more importantly, the truth of her skill and experience had been made clear. She had not just survived, she had dominated, and she had done so with calm authority, humility, and precision. Afterward, Cross pulled her aside privately. "I underestimated you," he admitted, voice low, carrying a hint of respect and unease. "Not everyone can carry what you've carried, not everyone can move like that and remain composed. I didn't expect this." Jenna met his gaze steadily. "Expectations are rarely accurate until proven," she said simply. Her words were measured, almost casual, but the weight behind them was undeniable. Cross nodded slowly, understanding not just the truth of her words, but the experience, discipline, and resilience that they represented. That evening, Jenna returned to the barracks, the tattoo now revealed to those who mattered. It no longer needed concealment. Its significance had shifted from a mysterious symbol to a mark of earned respect. Trainees whispered about her past, about the legend she now represented in their eyes. Some felt inspired, others humbled, but all were aware that nothing would ever be the same again. For Jenna, it was a confirmation of her own purpose. The hood was gone, the tattoo exposed, and the truth of her skill and experience undeniable. She had arrived underestimated, mocked, and whispered about. She had demonstrated her capability and revealed the symbol that carried her history. And as she lay in her bunk that night, muscles aching but mind sharp, she allowed herself a small, private smile. The stage was set for the challenges ahead. The trainees, the instructors, and even Commander Cross now knew a truth they could not ignore. Jenna Morales was not just a trainee. She was an operative, a survivor, and a force whose presence demanded respect, caution, and awe. And the tattoo on her arm was more than art. It was a declaration of experience, of authority, and of a past that had prepared her for every challenge yet to come. The following morning, a sense of quiet anticipation hung over the SEAL training grounds. Jenna Morales moved through the drills with the same measured grace and confidence that had captivated her peers the day before. But this time, the energy around her had shifted entirely. No longer was she a figure of ridicule or whispered mockery. She had become a benchmark of skill, a quiet standard against which all others measured themselves. Even the most seasoned trainees approached her with a mixture of curiosity, respect, and in some cases, trepidation. The tactical simulations were more demanding than ever. The instructors had adjusted, pushing boundaries to test leadership, adaptability, and split-second decision-making. Teams were required to navigate obstacle courses with increased complexity, execute live-fire simulations with precision, and coordinate strategic maneuvers under strict time constraints. Jenna's calm authority became immediately apparent. Her gestures, subtle but deliberate, directed the movements of her team with an effectiveness that left instructors nodding in quiet approval. Her peers, initially hesitant, began to follow her guidance without question. For some, it was instinctual. For others, it was forced recognition of her unparalleled capability. A trainee attempting a risky maneuver faltered, and Jenna's hand steadied his arm, correcting him without breaking stride. Her voice, when it was used, was soft but commanding, cutting through chaos with clarity and authority. Commander Cross observed quietly from the sidelines, noting the transformation not only in her peers but in the base's atmosphere. Where doubt and whispers had once dominated, now there was focus, unity, and cautious admiration. He reviewed her records in his mind, her performance metrics, her strategic decisions, her flawless execution under pressure. Everything aligned with what he suspected. She had operated in a tier of missions so elite and secretive that only a few could comprehend the magnitude of her skills. After a particularly grueling live-fire exercise, trainees gathered in the training yard, sweat dripping, muscles shaking from fatigue. Many had stumbled, some had been eliminated from the simulation for mistakes, yet Jenna's team had completed the course with near perfection. The tattoo on her arm was fully visible now, a symbol of elite training and clandestine operations, recognized silently by Cross and feared silently by the others. Cross finally approached her during a brief pause. "You've exceeded expectations again," he said, voice quiet but firm. "I need to know, how extensive is your experience? Because what you're doing here goes far beyond even the most elite trainees." Jenna met his gaze, calm and unflinching. "Enough to know what works, and enough to know when silence is more powerful than words," she replied, her tone measured. Cross knew better than to push for specifics. This was someone who revealed the past only when she chose to. Her tattoo was a statement, a bridge between what was hidden and what could no longer be ignored. As the day progressed, Jenna took on a mentoring role, whether intentional or not. Trainees began seeking her guidance, asking questions about strategy, movement, and coordination. Her responses were brief, precise, and instructive. She corrected mistakes without arrogance, encouraged confidence without condescension. Slowly, she was reshaping the social dynamic of the entire training group. Those who had mocked her tattoo just days before now approached her with quiet reverence, aware of her authority and experience. In one particularly challenging exercise, a trainee named Carter struggled with the coordination between movements and timing. Jenna moved beside him, guiding him with subtle cues and small adjustments. Within minutes, his execution improved dramatically. He glanced at her, awed. "I don't know how you do that," he admitted, voice low. She simply nodded, gesturing to continue. Her silence was more instructive than any lecture, a lesson in focus and discipline that no trainee would soon forget. Cross continued to observe, increasingly convinced of Jenna's unique capabilities. The way she led without force, corrected without criticism, and inspired without speaking volumes was extraordinary. It was one thing to excel personally. It was another to elevate the performance of an entire team. He realized with a mix of respect and unease that the young woman standing before him was not just exceptional, she was transformative. As the afternoon wore on, the tactical exercises shifted to group coordination. Teams were required to execute high-stakes simulations with limited communication, relying heavily on observation, intuition, and pre-established signals. Jenna's team moved like a single organism, each member anticipating the next step, guided by her subtle gestures. The instructors noted that her team consistently completed tasks faster and more efficiently than any other group, even those composed of trainees who had previously been considered the strongest or most experienced. By evening, as the day's training concluded, the shift in perception was undeniable. Jenna had earned more than respect. She had established authority. Trainees who had mocked her, whispered doubts, or doubted her competence now approached her with questions, seeking insight, guidance, and mentorship. Even those who were naturally arrogant found themselves silently acknowledging her expertise. Cross approached her once more, this time outside the formal observation setting. "Jenna, I've reviewed your performance throughout the week," he said, his tone serious. "I've watched how you lead, how you correct, how you inspire others without even trying. I need to know, do your credentials match what I suspect?" She looked him in the eyes, steady and unflinching. "I'm here to train with you, not to prove she said softly. "Everything else will reveal itself when necessary. My past exists, yes, but it is only relevant if it prepares me for today and tomorrow." Cross nodded, understanding the careful balance she maintained. The tattoo on her arm was no longer a mystery to him, and he now fully recognized its weight. The insignia marked her as part of an elite unit, one that had operated under secrecy, surviving conditions most would never endure. He realized that her quiet mentorship, her leadership, and her unwavering precision were all rooted in experiences few others could claim. That night, Jenna returned to the barracks, reflecting quietly on the day. She had shifted perceptions, earned respect, and subtly asserted authority without a single act of arrogance. The tattoo on her arm was no longer a secret. It was a symbol of earned recognition, acknowledged silently by those who had witnessed her skill firsthand. In the dim light of her bunk, she prepared for the next day's exercises, muscles sore but mind alert. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more complex simulations, higher stakes, and new tests of endurance, strategy, and leadership. Yet she was ready. Every step she had taken, every challenge she had faced had led her to this moment. She was no longer underestimated. She was respected, acknowledged, and quietly admired. Cross, watching from the sidelines once again, scribbled notes in his journal. Jenna Morales was no ordinary trainee. She was a rare operative, capable of transforming the very atmosphere of the base, influencing her peers and demonstrating mastery under pressure. Her tattoo had signaled her elite past, but her actions had her present authority. Cross knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would shape the course of training, and possibly the future of every mission that followed, far beyond what anyone here had anticipated. As darkness fell over the training grounds, the quiet hum of admiration, curiosity and respect lingered in the air. The girl once laughed at for her tattoo had become a figure of authority, a benchmark for excellence, and a silent teacher to those who now looked to her not with mockery, but with awe. The transformation was complete. Jenna pulled her hood down, resting it on her shoulders, revealing the tattoo fully in the dim glow of the evening lights. It was no longer a symbol to hide. It was a testament to skill, resilience, and the quiet command of a person who had faced challenges few could survive. The respect she had earned today was only the beginning, and she knew the true tests, both of ability and perception, were still ahead. The following morning dawned gray and overcast, the air heavy with tension. Today's exercise was unlike anything the trainees had faced before. The instructors had designed a full-scale simulated mission, combining urban combat, hostage rescue, and strategic coordination under extreme conditions. Mistakes would carry consequences, and leadership would be scrutinized as closely as execution. Jenna Morale stood at the edge of the formation, hood pulled back, tattoo visible in the dim light. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the nervous energy radiating from the other trainees. Some adjusted their gear nervously, others exchanged hushed words, trying to steel themselves for what lay ahead. All eyes, however, were increasingly drawn to Jenna. Her presence had become magnetic, a silent command that demanded attention, respect, and trust. Commander Cross observed from the observation deck, notebook in hand, but with an intensity that suggested he was cataloging more than just performance. Today would reveal everything: skill, leadership, judgment, and the authenticity of her experience. His instincts told him that this mission would solidify her place in the unit, or expose a flaw he had yet to detect. The mission began with a briefing. Teams were tasked with infiltrating a mock urban environment, clearing multiple buildings, neutralizing simulated threats, and extracting high-value hostages. Each team faced identical challenges, but only the most coordinated, strategic, and adaptable would succeed. Jenna's team moved first, executing a silent approach through narrow alleys and over debris-strewn streets. Her gestures were subtle, barely noticeable, yet each trainee understood exactly what she meant: where to halt, when to advance, which path offered cover, and which presented risk. Her team flowed like a single organism, anticipation of her commands almost instinctual. The first building loomed ahead, windows shattered, doors barricaded. Smoke grenades hissed, sending clouds curling into the corridors. Trainees flinched, some hesitated, but Jenna pressed forward, scanning each corner, hand signals guiding movements. She cleared rooms systematically, moving with precision and authority. One trainee faltered, fumbling with his equipment, and Jenna was there instantly, correcting him without a word, ensuring the operation continued seamlessly. Cross watched closely, the corners of his notebook filled with detailed observations. Each movement Jenna made, every adjustment, demonstrated skill and experience that exceeded anything he had anticipated. Her tattoo, fully visible now, marked her as a veteran of elite covert operations, but it was her execution, judgment, and leadership that confirmed it. As the mission progressed, challenges escalated. Simulated hostiles fired blanks from concealed positions, alarms blared, and smoke thickened, reducing visibility to near zero. Many trainees panicked under the pressure, making mistakes that jeopardized their teams. Jenna's composure never wavered. She adjusted tactics on the fly, repositioned team members without hesitation, and communicated danger and opportunity through subtle gestures. Her strategic mind anticipated threats before they appeared, and her team moved with perfect synchronization. At one point, a mock hostage situation required immediate extraction under heavy enemy fire. Jenna calculated the risks in an instant, signaling her team into formation. She herself led the extraction, covering angles, neutralizing simulated threats, and ensuring the hostages remained secure. Trainees who had struggled earlier watched in awe, realizing the difference between theory and true, experienced execution. Cross's attention sharpened further when Jenna made a decisive move during the extraction. She identified a structural weakness in one of the buildings that could have caused simulated casualties. Without hesitation, she rerouted her team, adjusted the extraction plan, and executed flawlessly. Every decision was precise, every action deliberate, every movement backed by experience that most of these trainees, and even instructors, could only imagine. When the mission concluded, Jenna's team had completed the objective faster than any other, with 0 errors and no simulated casualties. The other trainees stared, jaws slack, finally recognizing the full extent of her skill. The laughter, whispers, and doubts of earlier weeks had been replaced by a combination of awe, admiration, and humility. She had led them, instructed them, and protected them, all without speaking beyond necessity, all while maintaining complete control of the chaotic environment. Cross descended from the observation deck, approaching her as the other trainees were dismissed. "You've exceeded expectations yet again," he said, voice low but carrying respect and awe. "Every move you made calculated, precise, and effective. The tattoo, your calm, your instincts, it all aligns. You're operating at a level few even dream of reaching." Jenna met his gaze evenly. "It's not about showing off," she replied calmly. "It's about doing what needs to be done. If you lead by example, others will follow, whether they admit it or not." He nodded, realizing that her leadership was not just skill in action. It was influence, authority, and quiet power that inspired confidence. She was shaping the unit not just through talent, but through mentorship, composure, and the example she set. In the debriefing room, instructors highlighted her performance, noting both efficiency and strategy. Trainees were encouraged to discuss the operation, and many naturally turned to Jenna for insight. Questions flowed: how to anticipate threats, how to move silently, how to coordinate under extreme stress. She responded with brevity and precision, teaching without dominating, instructing without condescension. By the end of the session, the trainees not only respected her, they aspired to emulate her discipline, composure, and intelligence. That evening, as darkness fell over the training grounds, Jenna sat quietly in the barracks, reflecting on the day's success. She had not only completed the ultimate simulated mission, but had her reputation as a leader, strategist, and mentor. The tattoo on her arm, once mocked, now served as a visible reminder of her elite past and unmatched capability. Cross, meanwhile, scribbled notes in his journal, more focused than ever. He had overseen thousands of operations, trained countless operatives, and yet few had unsettled him as Jenna Morales did. Her combination of skill, discipline, and subtle authority was unmatched. He realized that she wasn't just a trainee or a survivor. She was an asset of exceptional value, one whose abilities could shape the outcomes of future missions in ways few could predict. The other trainees had changed as well. Fear and skepticism had been replaced by determination, respect, and the desire to rise to the standard Jenna had set. They whispered about her past, about the tattoo, about the mysterious experiences that had honed her skill. For them, she had become a benchmark of excellence and a symbol of possibility, proof that mastery and resilience could emerge even in someone who had once been underestimated. As Jenna lay in her bunk that night, muscles exhausted but mind alert, she allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction. She had faced skepticism, mockery, and challenge, and she had not only survived, she had led, instructed, and inspired. The tattoo was no longer a secret or a symbol of disbelief. It was a mark of authority, history, and skill recognized by both peers and superiors alike. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring new challenges, more complex simulations, increased stakes, and opportunities to demonstrate her abilities yet again. But for now, the ultimate test had been completed. The trainees had witnessed the extent of her skill, and Cross had seen her for what she truly was, an elite operative whose presence demanded respect, whose judgment commanded attention, and whose abilities had earned her a place among the very best. The stage was set for the final chapter. The trainees had been tested, the instructors impressed, and Cross fully aware of the extraordinary operative in their midst. Jenna Morales had proven herself beyond doubt. She had not just survived the ultimate simulation, she had dominated it. And the tattoo on her arm was no longer just ink. It was history, authority, and the quiet power of a woman who had faced the impossible and emerged unshaken. The sun rose slowly over the SEAL training base, casting a soft golden glow across the grounds. Birds chirped faintly in the distance, but the energy in the barracks and on the field was far from peaceful. Today marked the final evaluation of the training cycle, a comprehensive test designed to measure not just skill and endurance, but leadership, coordination, and tactical judgment under pressure. For most trainees, it was daunting. For Jenna Morales, it was another opportunity to lead, teach, and prove that her past had prepared her for every challenge the present could throw. As trainees assembled for the briefing, whispers of anticipation rippled through the ranks. They had seen her skills, witnessed her composure, and recognized her authority over the past week. The tattoo on her arm, once a source of ridicule, had transformed into a symbol of undeniable respect. Some of the more skeptical trainees exchanged glances, silently acknowledging that the girl they had mocked was now the benchmark for excellence. Commander Cross observed silently from the perimeter, notebook in hand. Today's exercise was different from any previous one. It combined elements of urban combat, hostage rescue, and rapid response coordination into a single, continuous mission, designed to test leadership under extreme stress. He knew Jenna had already proven herself, but the final evaluation would solidify her legacy, both in his eyes and in the eyes of the trainees she had inspired. The mission began with a simulated emergency. Hostages were held in multiple buildings across the training grounds, alarms blaring and obstacles littering the streets. Trainees were divided into teams, each responsible for rescuing hostages while neutralizing simulated threats. Chaos erupted immediately, and hesitation would mean failure. Jenna stepped forward calmly, her movements precise, deliberate, commanding attention without a single raised voice. Her team followed instinctively, responding to her subtle gestures and silent cues. Doors were cleared, hallways scanned, and hostages secured under her watchful eye. At every turn, Jenna anticipated potential hazards, rerouted her team when necessary, and ensured coordination between squads. Her presence was magnetic. Even the trainees from other teams instinctively deferred to her strategic decisions when a critical choice needed to be made. Cross watched, notebook forgotten for a moment, completely absorbed by her leadership. Each movement, each decision, each command, even when unspoken, demonstrated not only skill but also experience and authority that could not be taught. The tattoo on her forearm caught the sunlight briefly as she signaled a maneuver, reminding him of the elite history behind her calm composure. She was living proof that expertise, courage, and precision could coexist in a single individual, and she had carried it into a room filled with those who had doubted her mere days ago. At one point, a simulated explosive device blocked the path to a key objective. Most teams hesitated, unsure how to proceed without endangering their team members or the hostages. Jenna assessed the situation in seconds, signaling an alternate route while providing protective cover for her teammates. The maneuver was flawless. Every trainee under her command moved seamlessly, guided by her silent authority and tactical foresight. Cross could barely contain his awe. By mid-mission, the impact of Jenna's leadership became undeniable. Trainees who had struggled under pressure were now executing advanced maneuvers with confidence. Those who had mocked or doubted her abilities were now learning from her example. Even instructors acknowledged her influence, quietly noting her effectiveness in coordinating complex operations with clarity, precision, and calm authority. As the final phase of the simulation approached, Jenna led her team into the central building, the last stronghold of the enemy. Smoke filled the corridors, alarms blared incessantly, and trainees moved under intense stress. Her tattoo glinted in the low light, a silent testament to past experiences that had honed her instincts and resilience. She signaled her team into formation, calculated the safest and most efficient path, and executed a final sweep with a combination of precision and authority that left observers stunned. The mission concluded with Jenna's team successfully securing all hostages and neutralizing all simulated threats in record time. Trainees and instructors alike stood silently for a moment, absorbing what they had witnessed. It was more than a successful operation. It was in leadership, strategy, and execution. The previous hierarchy of skill, confidence, and authority had been irrevocably reshaped. Cross approached her immediately, his expression a mixture of relief, pride, and awe. "Jenna," he said, his voice calm but carrying weight, "you've done more than complete the exercises. You've led, instructed, inspired, and transformed every trainee here. I've seen many operators in my career, but few have had the impact you've had in such a short time." Jenna met his gaze evenly, calm and composed. "I didn't come here to impress," she replied softly. "I came to do my job, to help others do theirs, and to ensure that when the mission counts, we all succeed." Cross nodded slowly, understanding the full significance of her words. He had known she was exceptional, but her ability to elevate those around her, to inspire confidence and precision without dominance, was rare even among elite operatives. Her tattoo was no longer a curiosity. It was a symbol of the truth she carried: experience, survival, and the quiet power to lead with both skill and integrity. The trainees gathered around afterward, and for the first time Jenna addressed the group directly. Her voice was calm but carried authority. "Today wasn't about me," she said. "It was about all of you, about learning, executing, and trusting each other. Remember that strength comes from skill, discipline, and the willingness to act when others hesitate." Her words resonated deeply. Those who had doubted her now hung on every sentence, inspired by her presence and experience. That evening, as the base quieted and trainees reflected on their journey, Jenna prepared her gear for inspection, muscles aching but mind alert. The respect she had earned was now universal. The initial ridicule over her tattoo had transformed into admiration, acknowledgement, and quiet reverence. She had become a mentor, a benchmark, and a living example of what could be achieved through discipline, resilience, and experience. Cross walked past her bunk one final time that night, stopping to glance at the tattoo that had started it all. "You've left a mark on this team that goes far beyond ink or exercises," he said quietly. "Your presence, your leadership, your example, this is a legacy." Jenna allowed herself a small, private smile. "I hope it helps them," she said softly. "That's enough." For Jenna Morales, the journey had been about more than proving skill or surviving mockery. It had been about influence, mentorship, and demonstrating the power of experience when paired with humility and precision. The tattoo on her arm, once a source of doubt and whispers, now served as a beacon, an emblem of survival, authority, and earned respect. As the base settled into night, the other trainees lingered in their thoughts, replaying the week's events, analyzing their own performance, and reflecting on the extraordinary example Jenna had set. The lesson was clear: true skill transcends perception, and authority is earned through action, not appearance. The girl they had laughed at had transformed not only herself but the entire unit, leaving an indelible mark on the hearts and minds of everyone present. And somewhere in the quiet of the barracks, Jenna Morales finally allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She had faced doubt, mockery, and immense challenge, and she had prevailed. She had revealed the tattoo, demonstrated her skill, earned respect, and inspired those around her. Her journey, once hidden in shadows, had emerged into the light, complete, undeniable, and unforgettable. The legacy of Jenna Morales was no longer just hers alone. It belonged to every trainee she had taught, every observer who had witnessed her leadership, and every SEAL who would carry forward the lessons she had embodied: courage, precision, discipline, and the quiet, commanding authority that defines a true operator. In the end, the girl who had once been underestimated had rewritten the rules, leaving an indelible mark on the SEAL training base, and on everyone who had the privilege to witness her in action.